tried so hard to let go, writing poetry and rhymes just to get you off my mind. It's either yes or it's no. I'm not a yo-yo on a string that you flip and twist and swing. I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, second guessing your words, 'cause you choke right when I see that you're all I really need. But if I'm honest, I know this whole thing has been a sign that I'm running out of time. I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, you don't get everything you like, yeah. You don't get everything you like, yeah, 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 yeah. No. I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready, I'm not gonna vibe tonight. You don't get everything you like, 'cause I'm not ready. If I'm not ready,
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
Hey everyone, welcome to Meanwhile Back at the Lab with Paximus. I hope you're having a wonderful day, whether it's the morning, afternoon, or in fact evening. I'm so glad that you are here spending some time with me and my special guest, Ellis Warren. Guys, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and just a couple of things that I want to touch on before we get started. If you are in the chat, please feel free to be as active as you want, asking questions. If you have any questions for our special guest, Ellis, please feel free to go ahead and put in all caps the word question and then your question, all caps question, and then the question that you have. We're going to be talking quite a bit today with Ellis about just motivation. I think is one of the key words really that we're going to be focusing on, but we're going to also get to know Ellis a little bit. He is an author, he is a runner, and he is a Japan enthusiast as well as a YouTuber. So if you haven't done so already, I would love for you guys to go ahead and go to the description below. There is a link for his information on his YouTube channel that I would love for you to subscribe to. His book is also called Running for Success. We're going to be actually talking with Ellis a little bit about this book, Running for Success. It is how to overcome low motivation, boost your mental health, and increase your productivity. And just so that you guys are aware, we're also going to put this on all different podcast platforms. So there is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, there is Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and even Amazon as well, which is where you can purchase this book. And I got to be honest, guys, this is a great, great book. I unfortunately didn't get through all of it because I just ordered it last weekend and got here in time for this conversation. But I was able to read at least like 40 pages, and I got to say, it's very, very, very fun, very conversational, and it's very inspiring. So I really hope that you'll stay for this conversation that we're going to have with Ellis. And without further ado, I would love to go ahead and bring in our special guest, Ellis Warren. Ellis, thank you so much for being here. It's really great to see you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you very much, Pax. A very good evening to you. A very good evening to everybody in the chat as well. It's a lovely autumn evening here in the UK, and I've been looking forward to this all day. So, looking forward to a great chat. Thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely. So I do want to start with just usually what I do is I ask questions like, who you are and what you do. Could you tell us a little bit of that, of how you kind of started with the YouTube platform? Because that is how I did kind of come across you, but we'll get into that in the middle of our conversation. But just to tell us a little bit of who you are and what you do.
Yes, I'm Ellis, and I started my YouTube back in March, and it really came about from sort of looking at how the world's been changing over the past couple of years, and in this day and age, YouTube is fantastic platform for building a community and really sharing your message and sharing whatever you want to share with the world. I look to YouTube as like True Geordie, for example, who makes his living, makes his brand out of just talking about things he's passionate about, whether it be football, fighting, or mental health, all types of topics.
Yeah.
And I was quite inspired by that, and I thought, like, as my career gets underway as a worker in the broad sense, I thought it'd be great to just have a channel to, promote what I stand for and just build a good audience. My main, what should we call it? My main endeavor, my main output is writing. I love writing, whether it be fiction, non-fiction, sharing my experiences or sharing stories that either inspire, entertain, anything like that. So I thought just having a YouTube would be a great way to connect with people and, maybe promote some of my books when they come out. And, that's how it all came about.
Well, I think that's fantastic because, like I said, as I was kind of getting into this book that you wrote, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is your first book, correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I have to say fantastic because this is wonderful, and I found it to be very conversational, inviting me into the conversation. That's the kind of book that I really get into. So I do want to start off with asking you a little bit about how this all started. So and really, because you're talking about running for success. Now, one of the questions I had was, why is running so important, and what does it produce and reveal, perhaps, about a person?
Yeah, so running is basically that first book. It's a story about running, but it is overall the story of how I turned things around in my first year of university, and how running sort of helped me build that particular mindset, which it doesn't guarantee that all your problems are just going to disappear in life, but it gives you the belief in yourself and the tools in a practical and mental sense as well to know that you can get through things. And I actually started running purely because I was always rubbish at it. I always had really bad stamina in school. I love to share this one because I used to do Sunday league football when I was a teenager. And I have this distinct memory of my stamina was so bad that after 5 minutes I was completely out of breath, and I had to signal to the manager to sub me off because I just couldn't give any more. And everyone in the opposing team, including my team, just looked at each other and went, "Already? What's this geezer about?" So that stuck with me. And from those kind of experience, I thought, I want to start working on this. And I had this kind of it was almost like an experiment where I thought, if I get if I get the goal of running a marathon and I give myself a proper plan for it and I follow it properly,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can say I've done the proper training, then maybe I'll be able to run a marathon, and we'll give it a go and we'll see what happens. It's worth it. And what happens with where it comes into the study and the motivation and finding out new things about yourself is that it actually tied in, it almost ran parallel to how I was developing as a student, as a bloke. At the time, I was 19 when all this was taking place. And it sort of, the journey of running ran alongside the journey of overcoming the difficulties of studying economics, which was a brand new subject for me at the time in university, and Japanese as well. That was my degree. And yeah, leading up to exams, leading up to the marathon, and just realizing that when you have a plan, even if you're not motivated, you can will yourself to fall back onto your plan and keep going forward regardless of how you feel about it. So that's the essence of the story.
Yeah. And so you talk about the motivation, how to overcome low motivation. What is motivation to you, and how does it correlate with just like how does it work in terms of your journey? And then just tell us a little bit about how that turned around for you.
Yeah, so I've always found motivation to be an extremely volatile feeling. For me, it's that it's not just a feeling of, yeah, I want to do this, let's go do it. It's also that sort of belief and legitimacy you give to your own goals. And when your motivation starts to run low, you start to almost rationalize thinking your way out of it. And then you go down the road of procrastinating or giving up altogether. And when it comes to giving up, there's nothing wrong in quitting something that's just not working for you. But a lot of the time, when we have this goal, we set it for a very personal and serious reason for ourselves. Like at the very basic level, like a goal of getting fitter and healthier. That's something that we genuinely want, and so you don't want to give up on that. But a lot of the time, motivation does. So the whole low motivation thing, I experienced how volatile it was when I started running, because I was getting this positive feedback loop. I was running further and faster. I was getting fitter, and the mental health boost from all of the endorphins and everything, it was helping my studies. So I thought, I don't want to stop this. But obviously, if we take things to extremes, we go too far with them. And I got an overuse injury, which is the second section in the book. And when that injury happened, and I couldn't run at all, my motivation to study, to live as a functional human being on my own in a flat in London, to cook properly for myself, to go to sleep at the right time, that all came crashing down all at the same time. So I realized when your motivation goes, it really does, it can dictate how you live the rest of your life. And it's a horrible sort of domino effect. And that's why I thought we need to find a way of not letting this single variable control so much. So yeah, that's where the essence of willpower comes in.
Willpower, and that you definitely do talk about willpower. The one thing that I was looking at in looking at your book, you mentioned in your book that for anyone who has experience, and this is more towards the mental health, because you perhaps touched on it, just how that perhaps was one big setback, just your outlook on things. So I wonder what your mental health was at that point. And for you say in your book, for anyone who has experienced a mental health issue, this book is for you, and that you always have a choice. You pose important questions such as, why don't I enjoy my studies? Why do I find the work so hard? Why do I dread each class? You go on to say it's because I'm just not good enough. Surely that is a relatable conflict I find, that is shared among a lot of college students specifically, or just any student. And with you, as I mentioned in your book, you mentioned it's like a negative spiral, resulting in increasing isolation. I'm kind of curious, how did you overcome getting out of that rut? How did you move forward when perhaps things were a bit dark?
Yeah, so for me, originally this all came about because for me, starting university was an unbelievable culture shock. Like it's strange to say this, but having been born in London, I thought I knew the capital well enough. But I go to a university campus there, and it's a different world. because I've come from quite a small secondary school where we're all brothers. We've known each other 7 years. There's about 150 of us who know each other like brothers. And we had a few sisters as well coming in during sixth form. But go to university, humongous campus, people from all over the world. And it's, without being intentional a lot of the time, it is a very competitive place. And there's a lot of egos going about, mine included. And you feel like there's this... is everyone going out socializing, everyone living fulfilling lives, doing well with their studies. All the conversations I had with people in my economics department in the early weeks of my first year used to make me feel horrendous, because they were finding it really straightforward because they'd done it before. And there was me thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know what these graphs mean. There's just some curly lines everywhere. So that really, this kind of feeling like I was almost alienated from what was going to be my life for the next 4 years really terrified me. So we're getting a little bit of depression. There's mainly anxiety at play here, imposter syndrome, a lot of the main culprits. So what really was the big turning point was when I stopped subscribing to this common idea of what a university experience was meant to be. And I found that, yes, on the campus is filled with the well, I don't really classify it in terms of majority, minority, but the people that are living it up are obviously the loudest in every sense of the word. You only pay attention to those who look like they're having more fun than you, especially when everyone in your flat is having a massive party and there's you sort of getting an early night. And I realized that the marathon was the first instance of where I set my own goal and where I did something personal, like entirely for me. It wasn't to impress anyone. It wasn't even for my grades. It was to prove to myself something. And from there on, with the skills that running taught me, mainly planning, long-term planning with short-term goals, I then started applying that to university, and I stopped making my studies about how I was doing in comparison to everyone else. And I started to live on my own terms. And so it was really sort of it was finding that intrinsic drive, those intrinsic whys of why we're working, why we're here in the first place, and just not really worrying about everything around you.
Yeah, and I love that. It's very often I find in education, because a lot of my coworkers that are in education, we always run into this question for some reason, and finding the intrinsic value versus the extrinsic. And I'm glad that was something that you just felt like you needed to prove to yourself, that I wanted to see something out of this, and I'm trying to move forward. Moving into your book a little bit, I dug in a little bit deeper, just in the first couple of chapters, or in the first and second chapter. But could you explain to us, because I found it very interesting, what is EEL?
All right, yes. So the idea of having excuses and laziness, and all these reasons why we can't do anything, and this is at its most basic level. A lot of the time, we deny ourselves great achievements and deny ourselves personal accolades, which shape the rest of our lives, because of the idea that there's the ego part. It's big, and I find that it's very comforting to stay with the knowledge that, I could do this if I put my mind to it. If I had all the elements, if the world was all the planets aligned in my favor, I could do it. With the marathon example, a lot of people will say they could run a marathon, they could do X and Y if Z, and it's basically living in hypotheticals. And there's a thought I have in the book where when you're on your last days, when you look back on what you've done over your life, you think about what you've actually done, like, properly. And you don't think about what you could have done, or if you do, then that's a regret almost, isn't it? So it's a lot of the time we deny ourselves, and it can be ego, it can be anxiety. Going out of your comfort zone, trying something with the possibility of failure, is really difficult to do, because you have to break out of your normal lifestyle. Even when I was sort of feeling a bit bad about university and not really getting anywhere with it in those first few months, I kind of got used to the struggle. I kind of got used to my place,
Mm-hmm.
both in a physical sense and a mental sense. And it was hard to break that because the idea of changing everything up was actually very much anxiety inducing. And so it's what we fall back on. And so going against those evils, the ego, excuses, the laziness, it's a risk, but it's a risk that we take in order to better ourselves. It's an investment in ourselves, and it's difficult, but you have to take that risk sometimes.
Yeah, and I do want to touch back a little bit on the idea of what you talk in your book about willpower, and I'm kind of curious because one of the questions I had for you would be like the willpower versus motivation, which is the greatest, and do you need both or to achieve a level of success, but not just for like exams, but anything to accomplish in life. Like, is there a difference, or do you need both, or what's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think when we, I think at a basic level, we need motivation to start or to attempt or even think of anything that would be worthwhile to us, anything that's exciting, adventurous, to conjure up a goal in the first place. But the reality is, we don't live in an ideal world, and life will inevitably get in the way at some point. Again, going back to the marathon story, as motivated as I was to run for every day, well, every few times a week for 4 or 5 months to run the marathon,
Mm-hmm.
the injury got in the way, studies got in the way, all sorts of things. And so, as do you remember when I was saying about how it was like a domino effect and everything just comes crashing down at once?
Mm-hmm.
If you make a perfect plan and you have this goal and you know exactly how you're going to do it, that's great. But you've got to have contingency ideas, because on if you rely on being able to fulfill a plan perfectly, on being able to study perfectly each day, when things go wrong, you're going to really beat yourself up about it, or at least that's what I do. And then the motivation just comes crumbling down because everything's suddenly going wrong. And that's where the willpower comes in. When everything's going wrong, when there's seemingly no hope about, you have to stick to the plan and just keep moving forward. It doesn't matter if you're walking, crawling, or just edging forward with your fingers on the ground. You've
Right.
got to somehow keep yourself going,
Yeah.
and that's essentially what it is.
Well, and so I do want to talk a little bit about how I encountered your YouTube channel. There was, because we were talking just now about willpower and motivation. Now, I'm kind of curious because the way I came across your channel was through one of your videos. And one of the videos that you posted on your YouTube channel had to do with a Study With Me streamer who's very popular in the Study With Me community. His name is James Schultz. So this is a person who has a lot of attention in the last year, and I found your perspective very intriguing, very, very, I would say, thought provoking for sure. And I'd love to kind of just talk with you a little bit about your view and outlook on this particular person who is doing studying with me, streaming every day for 12 hours a day. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you thought that perhaps you couldn't put in the video because of time's sake.
Yeah. So James Scholl. So first of all, I think he's an absolutely wonderful man. Incredibly inspiring, has the most pure and brilliant goals. And there's a lot of things I admire about him. Some things I didn't mention in the video include the way he optimizes his study
Hmm.
area, his routine as well. He does what works for him, and especially when I saw his stream, he's got all of his notes really nicely laid out, and he's doing it so that he doesn't get chronic backache from doing 12 hours a day every day. And I
Right.
thought little details like that I really admired. But
Hmm.
on the bigger picture, I thought he was brilliant. But I looked at that and I saw the incredible determination and resolution he has, and I saw the kind of fan base he's built up,
Hmm.
and a lot of people really passionately align themselves with his ethic, his work ethic, his goals. And I thought this was really good. But at the same time, I also saw, well, in my mind, the way I saw it was, I saw someone who was extremely determined, and I found myself almost obviously I'm nowhere near in terms of inspiring and as great as he is, but I found myself empathizing in
Mm.
certain areas, and I felt I sort of didn't want to make assumptions. You inevitably do when you make such a video, but I wanted to ask questions which, even if they don't, if I've got it completely wrong about James, it might well be relevant to someone who's doing a similar type of lifestyle, similar journey to him, because it's certainly things that I had, and it's the questions I asked, as in what's the next big thing, and when does this stop, and
Hmm.
a crucial one is really, when do you get so caught up in your work and working for the future that you start to neglect your social relationships around you? And not just that, but also, are we doing things for the right reason? Because it's all great having these goals, but the amount of times in my life that I've done something quite extreme when I knew it wouldn't really be good for me, but I had this feeling of I should be doing this, almost like there's a chip on my shoulder telling me you should be working like this, even if you, whatever you feel about it. So the video aimed to ask a few questions, and it was, yeah, it's a comment on the study streaming community, but it was mainly a video about mental health and how we healthily approach our why in life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, with your perspective, I found just the the thing that you were talking about is, when does it stop? Like, when do you, like, once you've accomplished what you set out to accomplish, how do things actually turn up? And I found and this perhaps may get a little bit more personal, but you did add it into the conversation on your video, just the relationship with your dad,
Mm.
and how he worked very, very hard for a very long time, and you had a great relationship with him, but that you saw you were able to reflect, perhaps, on this, and that's maybe why you empathized with James a little bit, and just like, where does it stop, and how does that look like once it does? Um,
Mm.
so I'd love to hear, just maybe if you can explain a little bit more, based on your own experience with, your dad, and just, from what I understand, it was good relationship, but, you
Mm.
found it to be a marker for empathizing with James in this case.
Yeah, so it's I think when it comes to work and getting things done for what we know, what we believe are the right reasons.
Mm,
My dad's and I, and not too dissimilar, I think. I mean, this is a massive assumption. I might be completely wrong, but I feel like in the terms of that determination, we're not million miles apart from the way, from what James wants to achieve, and that is creating a better future for
hmm.
the people we care about.
Yeah.
And my dad did that with every working day.
Hmm.
He always had this grand idea of the future in mind, and he was always working towards something, which was good. But it's working always for the future, which you and there's two parts about this. That future might never come, and it didn't with my dad. He just kept working and working, and always found another reason to keep working. Again, it's finding that next big thing,
Mm,
and it just keeps on going. Otherwise, you then get to that goal and you just fall off straight away.
hmm.
And that's the last chapter in my book, actually. Very quickly, just
Hmm.
once you've achieved that goal of running a marathon or whatever it is,
Hmm.
what's next?
Right.
And most of the time you fill it with something harder, more extreme, and then it becomes a competition with yourself, and you get carried away with it, or you can do.
Yeah.
And I feel like with my dad, it was always building, 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 working hard for the future, but never like, this is all the time while I'm growing up, his mates are moving on with their lives, getting old, everything's happening around them, and you keep solely focused on your goals, and you don't really live life in the process. I know it sounds very simple, but it's, you take your eye off of what's really important, which is the now, because we only really have the now.
Mm,
And the people that we really care about and love, they're not going to be around forever.
right.
It's yeah, that's a part of it. And so with my dad, it was kind of working for a future that never came, and by the time it was too late, there was there's only what could have beens.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Thank you
yeah.
for telling us that. I really do appreciate you kind of expanding a little bit on that story. And,
Mm.
I will say this. So, for those of you who are in chat, thank you so much for staying with us and joining us in this conversation. We're going to still ask some questions to Ellis. So, in the meantime, I'm going to ask one more question. But if you have a question for Ellis, I would love to just kind of bring you into the conversation a little bit. And that way, Ellis can maybe talk with us a little of his experiences and what he's doing. But you also talk in your book. So there's two different questions here actually, but one is how we were talking about your dad, and I'm assuming he was an inspiration to you for sure.
Mm.
But there was another inspiration, I think, for you, one of your main influences for running, and I'd love to just kind of hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's my mum was a quality source of inspiration in starting running because she made it her lifestyle many years ago now. But she got herself she built herself up to it.
Mm-hmm.
She started out with what they call a couch to 5K plan. Which essentially takes you from just nothing at all, no exercise, kind of, well, not experience, but just being at an unfit position
Yeah.
and working your way up very slow to run 5 kilometers.
Mm.
And she's gone and made it her everyday lifestyle. She goes out for a run every day with the dog, and it has kept her. The way she's looked after herself is absolutely remarkable. It's so admirable because even as we all get on in years, she manages to keep herself strong. She hasn't changed her routine because there's nothing to really stop her. She's kept up running for, well, almost 2 decades now, and that's almost on a daily level. And the way she's I mean, it's like a strange thing to say, but in terms of going about aging, she's doing it remarkably. And if I can age as well as that, I'll be a very happy man.
Yeah.
So yeah, in
Yeah.
that regard, it's yeah, she's been great.
Well, and so we are gonna go ahead and just start looking through the chat to see if we have a question. It seems like we do have a question from Aparna. Thank you, Aparna, for your question. The question here is, how do you define in one word? How do you define yourself in one word, except choosing handsome? Thank you, Aparna. That's wonderful. Jokes apart, do you feel good of what you are doing, and what is the source of your motivation? So that's quite a bit to unpack. Let's say, how would you define yourself in one word, Ellis?
Oh, in one word, geezer. That's all. That's all it's all about.
Wonderful. Yeah, I actually saw that earlier on. You were kind of promoting, the talk that we were going to have. I saw geezer and I was like, oh, okay. So except choosing handsome, I love that. I had to put that back in. Except choosing handsome, jokes apart, but do you feel good of what you are doing, and what is the source of your motivation? Now, this is actually, I think this was earlier in the chat that this was asked. So if you have any other things to say about this, please feel free.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aparna. I appreciate your questions. It's so with the first one. So, do I feel good with what I'm doing? Yes, and I'll tell you exactly why. I'm in a very exciting period of my life called the dabbling period, and this is basically throughout ever since really we had to all go into this kind of isolated lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, due to the way of the world, it's given everyone an opportunity to try a lot of new things, and for me, it's been trying the book, starting the YouTube, and I'm also starting to learn code and a bit of UX design at the moment. So, in what I'm doing, I consider myself a tourist of the universe. I've been given this life to explore and learn and just see what everything's all about. And so I'm just enjoying trying all these new things. And what you do when you dabble, if you're the sort of person who's really stuck as to what your real meaning in life is, or what you want to do with your life as a career or as a passion, the dabbling period is what helps sort out what is really good for you versus what is actually not that good.
Right.
And I've done a lot of things over the past year and stopped a lot of things, given up a lot of things, just they weren't good enough for me. They weren't working.
Right.
And only by dabbling, by trying things, can you actually get to the real heart of what your drive is.
You
Yeah.
know, and I do want to touch on something because we were talking about your book earlier on. I want to kind of hear a little bit about where your love for writing came in because and I say this because I love to write. I love creative writing. I love fiction, nonfiction. Somehow I get lost in fiction though. I feel like that's the place where I can choose to wonder, about
Mm.
things. And I'm kind of curious to know like where your love and passion for writing came in, and because this is actually a pretty big feat to actually do a book. This is quite an accomplishment. So congratulations on this.
Thank you,
But
Paximus.
definitely, I would love to hear more of just your passion for writing and to perhaps do it in the future.
Yeah, so the whole everything leading up to the book, which was an amazing personal project, I gotta say. I did the cover, the formatting, I did it all by myself because I wanted to really be hands on and just be fully a part of this. And what really started it all off is that when I was in primary school, so talking age 11, we had to do some like a horror story, like a short story. And one of my teachers read it and she said, it's really good. And she sent me to the headmaster's office, which was a big moment. And the headmaster looked at me as if to say, what have you done? What have you been naughty about? But I showed her my book and she looked at it, and when you're a good boy in British primary schools, you get this really special red sticker with gold foil on it, Head Teachers Award. And it was the first time that like I had a sticker on my work, and I thought, goodness me, this is what a feeling. And I kind of got confident with it from there on.
Yeah.
I wanted to explore it a bit more, and to fast forward a few years, I then basically everything that goes on in my head every day is a scenarios about anything, and stories come from that. And a few years ago I published a couple of stories, shall we say,
Mm.
online, and they got really positive reviews. And just the other week actually someone DMs me saying, I was a big fan of what you wrote good 7-8 years ago now, and it really inspired me, it got me through hard time. And I thought, wow,
Wow.
to be able to, for me, the best feeling in the world is putting a smile on someone's face to make them
Yeah.
feel encouraged, because then they went to write a really bloody good story of themselves.
Yeah.
And that feeling of contributing through you doing your own work as well, I thought, I love this. I want to keep doing this. So that's where the book came about, because I thought I want to write, but also I want to make people feel encouraged. I want people to go out and get ideas and just like be inspired and entertained. And
Mhm.
through writing, that's what I feel I can do. And so I want to continue doing that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, and I love that how you're taking your passion of running and also bringing awareness to things as well, because that's what you had set out to do as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that? There was this awareness that you wanted to bring about through your running.
Yeah, so it's I feel like the running story, because especially for the fact that I was never a runner, I was never someone who was very fit in school. I realized that the mental health benefits, it's not just about what it can do for you physically, the way it can really change the way you, like, not just in a chemical sense, but in a way you go about planning
Hmm.
your life from a day to a year in advance. It's I thought, if I can go through this, just a normal bloke just coming out of Kent in the UK. I thought, if I can, if this can do this for me, surely people can find a similar thing. And when I got connected with the running community on Instagram, I found very similar stories, and I thought, I've got to share this, because at the moment running is very most popular with the older millennial type
Hmm.
demographic, so
Right.
people mainly working professionals actually,
Hmm.
but for my sort of generation, so I'm in my early 20s, going on mid 20s, and it's quite a scary time in life, because you're going out through the safety net of education, you're going into the working world,
Yeah.
and in terms of dealing with that anxiety, I want to share the way I overcame it, and not just not running away from my problems, but quite literally running through them. So
Mm.
that's where I want to share my message. Yeah.
I actually love that analogy. I've actually said that to some students because I've had students approach me and ask me like, I've had this analogy in my head that, if there's a door in front of me and it's locked, I can't get through. But what if perhaps you need to just break it down?
Mm,
There's the sense of like trying too hard where things are just clearly not working. But then sometimes you have to almost discern whether to actually be persistent or to, give up on it and just say,
mm,
I'm giving up on it because clearly it's just not working. It's not moving forward. So I love that analogy that you paint with that, like sometimes you just got to go through it.
mm.
We have another question, and this is the question is, what your experience teaches you and how does it help you?
Experience. So yeah, so this is the thing, right? As someone who up to now in life has been entirely in education, I mean, well, what I mean by school, school, university, sitting in a classroom, learning the theory of life and learning how things are meant to be. So it's knowing how things are meant to be is one thing, but as I've said earlier tonight, it's life doesn't always go the way your plan is meant
Mm,
to, and various things come in. Life gets in the way. Experience, not just in how to overcome hurdles, but experience really is the greatest teacher of who you really are as a person
mm,
and how you react in situations. And it's through this dabbling period, which has been huge for me. I really do find out what kind of bloke I am, who I want to be online, which is a really difficult question, which I'm still wondering about myself
yeah.
these days.
Mm,
But you only know by trying things and failing. And again, it's a cliche, but failure is just one more step towards something greater.
mm,
And you can't, in theory, you can't, there's nothing that comes about from that. You have to really take that risk of going about and experiencing something, even if it is failure. And yeah, those the deepest failures, as I've had many times in my life, I've started many things and failed miserably at them. They're always the greatest teachers. So yeah, experiences is huge.
yeah. We have a question here. The question is, usually people don't trust millennials these days with responsibility. What do you think about it?
Oh, that's quite a question, that isn't
That
it?
it that's a lot to unpack, actually. That's a great
Yeah,
question.
interesting.
I mean, we could talk about that all day.
Yeah, millennials and responsibility. Do you know what I find with uh, life these days is a lot of people are quite anxious when it comes to responsibility, and having no responsibility is a good position in many places because it means you can avoid criticism. And a
Mm.
lot of us are I'm a very sensitive person. It's I take a lot of things to heart.
Yeah.
So if something's not my responsibility, then it's almost like a comforting feeling that I can't be criticized for it.
Right.
And so this is like the mindset of it, really. And again, it's I think it's a really tough thing to grow up and expect and start to take responsibility for things and own up when you're wrong and be ready to change your mind when
Mm.
things aren't when you've been wrong about something. And it's difficult because no one likes receiving bad reception to something, especially now online. If you
Mhm.
say one bad thing, you've got an entire army of people coming at you, giving you a lot of rubbish, and it's I can't blame anyone for wanting to avoid it.
Mm.
But in a really general sense, it's been, yeah, I think with responsibility, we were spending longer and longer in school, and we've sort of it's a tough one. It's
Mm. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
it's
tough
just
to
getting used to it.
unpack, actually.
Yeah.
It's a bit difficult to unpack, I think, because, with the question of, trust millennials, that is a that's just a lot to unpack because, one would say that I am at the very beginning of that list. I think, I was born in '85, so
Mm,
but some people would still consider me perhaps at the very beginning of the millennial thing, and I think that there's quite a few people out there who are thirsty to continue moving forward in their life. I think there's also, like what you're saying, perhaps that avoidance of responsibility,
mm,
that because I don't want, if I don't have to, I won't. You know, I don't want
Yeah.
to get criticized for something, and then, like, it's, I find it funny. This is a bit of a tangent, but just going into Twitter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you go into Twitter, there's nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do. So someone picks something to do, they say something, and then people flock to it. They
Mm.
literally, like, they just, so if you say something bad, you'll pay for it, because then
Mm.
there's this, huge amount of heat that you get. And, one doesn't want to take any sort of criticism that way. But I find it that, moving forward in life, you need to be able to learn how to take criticism, and which is difficult.
Mm.
But it's also something that I find, like, I think the social media thing, it's funny. I try and stay away from it. Yet, though, I have, like, those profiles, to, like, promote
Yeah.
whatever I
I know what
have.
you
It's
mean.
so
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah. You got to keep the ball rolling, but you don't want to be there.
It's like I want to be relevant with you, but at the same time, like, I don't want to say anything, because
Yeah.
people are gonna, storm the castle a bit, and
Mm.
I don't know. I've just been kind of curious, um, what you think about this, because there are so many people who are very quick to assume or to judge.
Yeah.
I wonder, this may be just very outside of left field, but do you feel that people are not as forgiving because of the fact that the moment that something's said, it could either be taken out of context, or it could be, something's just not fully the story there, Do you
Yeah.
feel like the word forgiveness is perhaps not something on anybody's mind ever, or is that something that over time people will learn to forgive a person who may have done something wrong, said something wrong, and then, trying to move forward in their life?
1,000,000,000%. I think that's one of the problems of today because
Mm,
we've seen Twitter is a seriously nasty place, and
yeah.
it's designed to be that way because we live in a polarized world these days because conflict sells
Mm,
very much in the media, and Twitter's algorithm will dig out some of the most outrageous things because they're
mm-hmm.
going to get a reaction from you, and reactions equal engagement, and
Yep.
fights equal people on the platform, and it all feeds into the advertising.
Mm,
This we all know, but it's through that it becomes a constant conflict of my ideology is better than yours, or
mm-hmm.
your ideology is wrong, and it's not only are we lacking empathy, but yeah, forgiveness has completely gone out the window. It's because everything's packaged these days. You can take a clip from someone on YouTube, you can take a very small fraction of their life, and you can make a complete judgment about it.
Mm-hmm.
That can really, and when you've got especially the masses, the mob behind you, which is an absolutely terrifying prospect, it
Mm,
can completely change the way people see you.
yeah.
And the biggest thing above all of this is that, yeah, you can share around this idea, but people can change and their ideas can change, and there's this lack of acceptance for that, and the fact that some people have done some absolutely not so classy things in the past,
Right.
but you learn from that, and you learn from it, and that's not, well, as a writer I'd say character development, but in the
Mm,
human terms it's just growing up in it.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we need to, I'm a man of God, right? I'm all about forgiveness, and
Mm,
I feel like that is something which would definitely help us, even if we don't, if our ideologies, if our thoughts about the world aren't quite the same. I think a forgiveness of all these things, empathy, it's gone out of the world a bit, and so yeah, that does.
yeah.
I do struggle with the way of the world these days.
You know
It's
what?
not
And I,
easy.
I am really 100% with you on that. I mean, I cannot say it, just how much I see it in social media. The moment somebody slips, it's like, they're there. Just say, "Oh, you
Mm,
messed up," and, you know, um, I definitely believe that forgiveness has been long gone.
mm,
People in the media, especially, they love to, what you said, like click through rates, and, advertising, and, media just kind of just throws it at you. The algorithm's really good at doing that. So,
yeah.
I find it very interesting, but definitely, I do believe, though, when it comes to, like, the millennials, right? I do
Mm,
believe that there are many very ambitious and spirited people who are wanting to move forward in life and to make the world a better place. As cliche as that may be, but to
mm,
truly make it very, very much a good future for everyone.
mm.
So I'm gonna go back into the chat. We do have some more questions coming in. Let's see here. Okay, so attention value of people are decreasing these days. Less patience and short temper is becoming common. And that's in the form of a question, actually. But how do you think it can affect the common atmosphere of the society? So we touched on it, but if you have any more thoughts on that, please expand on that.
Mm. Yeah, this is huge, right? Because I have this conversation with friends and family a lot, and I think since we've all been kept isolated the past year,
Mm,
it's the it's obviously made a lot of people. You know, when you feel like a monkey trapped in a cage, you get a bit agitated, and that.
yeah.
That's a general sentiment. But the way a lot of the technology we interact with these days, like everyone's on social media, and those
Yeah.
that have managed to escape, seriously kudos to them. But
Yeah.
it's the the way it works is our attention span is just dropping and dropping, and we're not willing to hear people out, especially if you're someone like me who talks for absolute ages before they make a point. It's easy to get straight to what the judgment is. It's like when we go through websites and we're reading articles or something, we always scan, and this is
Yeah.
part of the I think there's that statistic in there that since 2000, the attention span has dropped so much, and it's because with the way we consume content nowadays as well, all in the form of short clips. Short clips are taken over YouTube as they have been so big with Vine and TikTok, and
Right.
it does concern me as well for the younger generation because I feel like this correlates with how much you're willing to hear someone before you make a judgment in it.
Right.
It's yeah, it certainly fuels prejudice because it it waters down the substance and nuance of everything
Mhm.
to you fit into either one end of the spectrum, and that goes back to how polarized we are these days.
Yeah. We do have another question here, which we may have touched on also, but what do you think of the trolling culture on social media? It has increased so much in the last couple of years, which we did talk about, but any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was recently reading a very interesting post by this quite a famous account that was mimicking a West Ham footballer, and they talked about how anonymous accounts and how comfortable people are when they feel anonymous,
Hmm.
not just online but in real life as well. It's like road rage, for instance. People would not react the way they do if they were outside the car,
Right.
but it's the same as on Twitter where people can hide behind a screen,
Yeah.
behind a anonymous account, and
Hmm.
they can say whatever they want. And it goes with the fact that a lot of people feel like they can't say what they really feel in society these days because of this judgmental world we're starting to live in.
Yeah.
And thus, people need an outlet. And that's what Twitter is. Twitter is an outlet for everyone just wanting to vent whatever's annoying them.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
so and so obviously it's a competitive world as well. Seeing people doing well for reasons they might not agree with, and so
Hmm.
people they find their targets. And there's also a sort of almost social police of people going around and it becomes, as we were talking about, clash of ideologies. And
Yeah.
so it all fuels into the way these platforms are set up, the battlegrounds they are.
Hmm. Yeah. We have another question. So the question is, how do you handle failures? That's a
Thank
bit
you
to
very much,
unpack
Your
as
Honour.
well. That's a good question.
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest with you. I'm not going to talk any rubbish. I have a good sulking period for
Mm,
however long it takes. I've just, I get it all out of me, and then I so with failures, I look at what kind of person I've become at the end of it,
mm,
and I ask myself, am I content with that? And the next thing I do is then look back at where I was at the beginning. And so from a failure, you can then take what you can then say, is either small successes or an overall message, learning experience. I've had many failures, but I think the best thing is that you learn a weakness in yourself, and that sets you up to address that in a future goal. So, for example, to give an example, recently it's not an absolute failure, but with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, ever since I started it, my breathing has been absolutely terrible. I gas out so quickly
Yeah.
because I'm just going because I'm tensing up the entire time. Because I'm in a fight with someone, it's like the adrenaline's going. It's a new experience for me.
Yeah.
And so I look back. I have a good sulking period after a training session. I think, oh, it's absolute rubbish. I just got beaten up today, which I get beaten up all the time. But I then think, right, I still managed to stay competitive up to a point, but then that was the problem. I learned that I let the nerves make me too tense, and so that's what I'm going to work on next week. Forget all the techniques, forget not being killed by someone choking me. Just learn to breathe properly,
Right?
and we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Fundamentals sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. Here's a good question for you. What is your guilty pleasure song?
Oh, I was hoping for this. Yeah, I'm a man of music. I take after my dad, but my tastes are all over the place. Honestly, it's very quickly. This is why I sort of really struggle with my YouTube videos, because all the music I want to use is so strongly copyrighted. I could never do it.
Yeah.
But it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, Future Funk's big for me at the moment. But I tell you what, the song at the moment is it's by Gwen Stefani when she was with No Doubt.
Oh yeah.
And it was It's My Life. There's a big tune that.
Yeah.
I absolutely scream that. When the house is clear, I put it on full volume and I absolutely go for it.
That's awesome. I love
Power
that.
song.
Well, you know what? And Gwen Stefani is actually she's pretty local to where I live, and I would hear all these stories, and I actually heard, like where she started out, and with No Doubt and everything like that, and they had basically the garage band, and I actually had the opportunity to hear from my friend who knew them pretty close, and said yeah, they were actually a terrible band at first.
Really?
They were terrible, but it's something about their character, their personality, the music, how when they played it live though, it just brought you in, and and I figure that maybe what It's My Life is one of those those relatable things, I suppose. So we do have another question. Why should I start vlogging? Oh, that's a great question, actually. Why would I start vlogging?
Why should I start vlogging? So I assume you've had the idea. So this is the way I see it, right? So at the start of our chat tonight, I did say with this day and age, having a platform to share your ideas and your passions with people is it's a great thing. Put it with vlogging, I could think of so many good reasons, but I'll focus on a couple. It's a good way to really channel everything that goes on in your mind, because we're all human beings, are layered, complex individuals. And I know it's difficult to put that up online, but to share what makes you you, to share what makes you a human in today's world, and how you get by, what makes you tick, and how you live your life. It's unique in the eyes of everyone else. And I think it's just wonderful to share a bit of you with everyone else, and learn from others that watch your content, and just have a good little community from it. And obviously as well, from the perspective of you as the creator, you've got a whole backlog to look back on what your life was during the 2020s, the post pandemic era, how you lived your life, what you did, and you can look back at it in decades to come and think, yeah, I was out there, I was doing stuff. This is what I did. This is what my life was. And I'll tell you what, I've done this with my blog as well. And you look back and you actually educate yourself on fundamental lessons sometimes that you might forget. And it's just teaching yourself stuff. Whatever your content will be, I don't know that for time being, but you inspire yourself from your own backlog of content. So 100% get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice. And I would say so. Oh, you know what? And we have another question, but I don't know if it's slightly broken or if this is the full question. Your advice to me. That is the question. So what advice would you give? I
Advice to a
believe just in a
farmer.
general sense, maybe.
In a general sense. So I'm going to go with one idea, and that is dabble. That is try as many things as you want to in life, and don't care if you fail at them, if you're no good at them. It's like my YouTube videos at the moment are a load of rubbish, but I'm working on them, right? Because I want to get close to what I actually want to make. I don't know what I want to make at the moment. I just want to make something. I want to
Mm,
write my books as well. I want to write something, but
right.
we're gonna work into that, and you might fail, and you might learn the art of giving up on things that are doing you no good. And that is
Mm,
very important, knowing when to stop when it's not working and move on to the next big thing.
yeah.
You're going to learn a lot about yourself in the process, and it does involve risks. But it is when you're at this age and you've got your whole life ahead of you and you're just getting started in hitting the motorway in terms of life with work and
Hmm.
everything, go out there and do absolutely everything because you're a long time dead. So go out there and live your life. Do
Uh,
everything.
I think that's great advice. That's absolutely great. And here's another question for you. How to be confident with yourself?
Confident with yourself. Yeah, so this is live for me. It's living to what my purpose is and what I enjoy the most with. Let's start again with that. So for me, I'm a very strange person, right? I talk in a certain way. I come across a certain way. You see me on the dance floor, though. However, I become a different person, right? And that's because now I can't dance at all. But do I love it? Hell yes. I will hit that floor like there's no tomorrow. And I'll be there till tomorrow. I can tell you that. And that is because I'm an unapologetically myself. And
Mm,
if people don't like that, then they're missing out because everything I do it because I enjoy it to the absolute maximum. This is the result of dabbling for so much in my life, finding things I like to do and just getting to the point where I enjoy them so much that that's the main thing for me. And look, if people are going to go against you, if people are going to make fun of you, that's their problem, right? Because it's not
yeah,
yours. You still love what you do at the end of the day,
right.
and they don't have to stay around. Look, there's plenty of people in this world. Not everyone are going to like you. That's not your problem.
Yeah.
You should just keep on doing what you need to do.
Yeah, and
So
I
yeah.
love how you are choosing to just kind of be yourself, have fun with the process, and just kind of like. And I do love the advice you're giving about just try everything, try new things, new experiences, and see what actually may fit for you, and what doesn't. Just move on from it.
Mm.
What? Oh, this is a good one. What is your ideal date? Asking for a friend.
Oh, ideal date. Oh, right. So this let me just think. So it really does depend. So what you got to do, right, when you're looking for an ideal date, you've got to make the very most of your surrounding city, town, wherever you are, because
Right.
there's lots of wonderful things to it.
Mm,
Ideal date. Oh, right. So when I lived in Japan, I was very lucky. I lived in a city called Kobe, and it's basically a mountain and the sea as well. So scenic either way. And what I'd do is I'd start off by meeting them a good, shall we say, a mile is a sensible. We meet them at the station, right?
yeah.
Go for a nice walk. You're walking. It's when it's awkward at the start. You want to be walking because you're moving, your brain's moving, and you're feeling good. You can loosen up, right?
Yeah.
Then you go for a nice. If it's a first date, you want a cafe. If you've known each other a little bit, go for a restaurant, right?
Mm,
Don't be afraid to go up
yeah.
to that level, and have a
Don't be
good time.
afraid to
Make
move
sure
into
you
that.
enjoy the food. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Make sure you enjoy the food as well. This is important, right?
Yeah.
If the date is rubbish, if the person's talk is rubbish and you really don't agree with them being in your life, to put it frankly,
Right.
just enjoy the food
Yeah.
because if everything goes well, you had a good meal, yeah?
Yeah.
Um, and then afterwards, I go for a nice walk, much longer than the mile when you first met. And just walk, enjoy the scenery, and just keep, make sure you're moving. because that can
Mm.
help ease the nerves.
Yeah,
That's what
and
I
well,
find.
and it gets the endorphins moving and all that stuff, and you're just
Hundred
you
percent.
feel a little bit more clear minded when you're walking and things like that. So, how do you
Yeah.
define love? That's a question. How do you
Define
define
love.
love?
Right, well, I'll tell you this. I'm still a relatively young bloke. I'm still working things out in life. But for me, love is a unique companionship, which which is with you. Oh gosh, whoa, I love this. We're getting deep. It's a companionship which you share exclusively with one person, and you can be an entirely passionate version of yourself, right? Because we wear different masks throughout life. I'm a different person in front of my family to the person I am on YouTube to the person I am in the workplace.
Mm,
But when you're with your partner, it is your most passionate and unapologetic version of yourself, and you share a unique connection which you can only have through that love for one another, and
mm.
it's accepting someone as they are as a human, which is a highly complex, highly flawed but beautifully made person. I was going to say organic matter, but that sort of ruins the vibe a little bit.
You're like, I didn't want to, put too much on that,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's a beautiful thing, and I believe in love. I'm a believer in love, and yeah, that's one of the things we've got to keep going in this highly polarized world.
Mm. This is an important question that I wanted to bring up. Why Japan? That I'm kind of curious about that myself. So,
I'm an extremely lucky person, I'll tell you that, Paximus. It's
mm,
when I was in secondary school, I grew up in a town called Medway, which is actually the birthplace of the very first Englishman who went to Japan in the early 1600s.
mm,
So there's this historical tie.
yeah,
And we've got this, we used to have this exchange with Kobe High School. And
mm,
every summer they'd send over students learning English to our school. We'd make lots of new friends. And I tell you what, at the end of a hard academic year, when these visitors from afar used to come, and we used to do lots of fun stuff. We used to go around London, do a bit of sightseeing, and I made some absolutely amazing friendships with people that are different but similar in so many ways,
mm,
and they become friends for life. And I still talk to them regularly. I still see them regularly. This was 8 years ago now,
yeah,
and every summer more would come, and you'd make unique friendships in a short space of time that last a lifetime.
hmm,
And so for me, Japan is the home of people that I call my second family, my
mm,
friends that I call family. And when I lived there for a year on my year abroad, I got to live in Kobe, and it was the most magical year of my life because I was around all the people that I really love as like family, as friends, as everything. And so that's what made me learn the language, because I wanted to get to know them more. I wanted to be a part of their lives more. And so that's what I hope to do when I eventually get to Japan. I just want to be with my mates again. And obviously, I really appreciate the culture. I think it's an absolutely outstanding country with many similarities with the UK, both being an island.
hmm.
So just yeah, having those friends, that is what brings me to Japan. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. We do have another question. Is what is the quote you live by and why?
Gosh, they change all the time.
I know, right?
I can't try and keep a track of all of them. And yeah,
I'm
changes all
kind
the
oh, you know
time.
what? It's funny. I'm kind of in the same boat with you because I'm like, wow, that's like my mantra. Nope. Now this is my mantra. It
Yeah,
just changes from time to time.
yeah. Oh, I honestly don't know, man. I'm thinking hard here,
Yeah.
but it's
That is a heavy loaded question actually because quite honestly, I think about like the different quotes that come in my head, but
mm,
at the same time, I'm thinking about something, whether it's subconscious or even consciously, but most of the time it's subconscious, and that's how I live my life. But I don't always like even quote, unquote. I just know that that's exactly the attitude I'm supposed to have towards life. And for me, I would say this, that when I live my life, it's to do justly and to be kind to others and
mm,
to love kindness and to be thankful. That is
yeah,
something that I live by, and that for me, that that digs in a bit deeper into like my faith, and So that's kind of where I live my life through. But for you, where do you feel like that would, like, what quote, or maybe attitude, mindset, really inspires you to move forward?
Yeah, so yeah, I've been having a little think, and it's I think one thing, what I get most about life, what makes me happiest is being around people I appreciate and feel like I'm
Mm,
contributing something to them. Doesn't have to be material or educating or anything. It just has to be being around each other and
yeah.
having the adventure of life. And in that
Mm,
regard, I feel like, I don't know, I can't really say a favourite one at the moment, but treat others how you would like to be treated is
mm,
an important one for me,
mm,
because whoever it is, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. It's I want to give my absolute best energy to people.
mm,
I don't want to. I want to improve people's day, even if it's just by smiling at them. It's every time I go out for a run, I pass a lot of people because it's in the countryside.
mm.
And sometimes you pass cars, sometimes you pass cyclists. Cyclists like to ignore you. They're in a world of their own, but whatever, they do what they want.
Yeah,
But
that's the same
wherever it
over
is,
here in the States.
oh, is it?
Yeah, totally.
They're a unique breed, but
Yeah,
good on them for
they
being
own the
out there.
joint,
But
as we like
yeah,
to say.
yeah. But whoever it is, it's always just say good morning, put a big smile on your face,
Mm,
and give a bit of good energy to the world. And even if the other person don't receive it, it's up out there in the air.
mhm.
And so you've given a good output, I think. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I go
I
by.
definitely would agree with that. So we have a few more questions, and then we're just gonna start wrapping up our time. So let's see if we can get through some of these questions here. Oh, this is actually a pretty good question here. What makes you get up in the morning? That's a great
Oh,
question.
my analog alarm clock, because it is so bloody loud, it scares the living
That's so
daylights out of
good.
me.
And
Oh,
that is
I,
100% truth right there. Like,
I
there's
will.
no
Yeah.
denying.
The problem is, the button on the top don't work properly, so I have this tiny little switch. So I have to fumble it in the morning, try and find the switch, and it drives me out the wall. The proper answer is having an actual plan on what I'm meant to do
Mm,
every day when I'm in my working mode, which isn't always, but when stuff needs to get done. I have my plan is a bullet point of things I've got to do, little tasks that I've got to do. So with my UX design, I'm designing a cinema app at the moment, and
mm,
so one of my goals for today was to finish all the screens where details have to be entered, where there's lots of field forms,
mhm,
and so I have an objective measure of what I'm meant to do. And I don't wake up with any existential dread because I'm zoned in and I'm focused on what I have to do.
mhm,
And so I get up and so that's a big thing. But a slightly less deep part is having a routine you can look forward to.
mm,
For you, it might be your morning yoga stretch. It might be watching telly. For me, I've got the most delicious cereal that can ever reach a bowl, and just that gets me out of bed, and it's the start of my day, and it's habit stacking. So I have my cereal as soon as the bowl is in the sink. You get sat down. Well, you brush your teeth and everything, but you get sat down, open it up. Let's get started. Let's get it. That's what
right.
it's all about.
Let's go for it. With a couple more questions here, the next one is when to know to give up on something.
Mm, this is very important.
Hmm.
So there is a time when I feel like this is like in a really broad sense. This can be applied to relationships and with projects, but you will find yourself want. There was a time where you know you want to do something.
Mm,
Um, so for example, I had this one of the things I've given up over my dabbling period of the past year is my running Instagram account.
mm,
I wanted to build up this big community, well, be a part of this big running community, and I wanted to use Instagram as a platform to do that.
mhm,
And I know it was something that's important to me because of the mental health, because of the running. I knew it
mhm,
was important to me, but it became a chore to do it, something that I thought should be my passion. Emphasis on the word should here. Every time I think should, it's almost a red flag. I
mm,
should be doing this, I should be posting, but it feels like a chore. And
mm,
I actually don't really want to do it. And I found that I tried to cling on to that. I thought, no, this is just you. This is you being a lazy. This is all your eels coming out here, your ego
Right.
excuses, your laziness.
Yeah.
So I give it a real proper go. I set up an entire week where I think, right, I'm going to be intense. I'm going to post every day. I'm going to talk to everyone. And I'm exhausted and I'm worn out and I'm not feeling good about it. I don't feel rewarded just by doing it. And so I stopped doing it. And then 2 weeks later, I asked myself, am I regretting stopping? Do I feel like I should be still doing this? And I tell you, I can guarantee you, you will feel amazing for actually stopping it. You will be thinking, actually, no, I feel better for not doing any posting in that regard. And yeah, once you do give up, it's a relief. It's a weight off your shoulders because
Totally.
you're clinging on to something.
Hmm.
We think we have all these passions. Once we actually get that experience, life tells us differently sometimes, and it's learning to accept that.
Yeah. I would agree. For me, I did different projects many times, and when I thought this would be great for a community, I always wanted to be part of something bigger than myself and
Mm,
include people into that. And I found it very interesting that when I did accomplish something, I was like, "Wow, that was great," but I was never really like the head of it or the one who was still. Yet it kind of just went on its own. However, were times like I was trying to start my own community, and it just wasn't working. And I was like, "Okay, so when do I throw in the towel?
mm,
When do I stop?" And I started to notice that the level of engagement, if you will, within the community was getting less and less, and people were just not really responding. I was like, okay, maybe it's time to move on. And it's
yeah.
just being able to gauge when things are going well and, people are really interested in something, or when
Mm.
people are perhaps not as interested and, maybe it's time to close that chapter.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
One thing I'll just add very quickly,
yeah.
actually, is if you feel like you can't be your most authentic self,
Mm,
yourself when you're enjoying life the most, if you can't put that, if you have to put a face on,
yeah.
then that's a sign that it's not really for you because that's not sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree with that. Um Here we have we got two more questions. So, should you give up a dream for your family? Wow,
Oh, big
man,
question.
that's a big question. How much time we got? That's a
Oh,
big question. Should you give up a dream for your family? Wow. Yeah.
yeah. So obviously, there. So two things. First of all, there's a distinction between your family that you might go on to create, and there's the one that you already have
Mhm.
when you were born into this world.
Right.
That makes the question a bit different.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to these seemingly dilemmas, so first of all, I haven't had the experience of making this decision before.
Mhm.
You might say moving to Japan is a decision that might go against family, but this is what leads me into the fact that I've mentioned dabbling, I've
Mhm.
mentioned trying everything. If you should, until the point in which you are literally about to breathe your last breath and die because you're stressing yourself out too much, you're pushing too
Mhm.
hard, you should try and do both
Mhm.
in and there's often a creative way we can go about things. Um, it's like when I was trying to get into university, I gave myself the dilemma of, right, am I going to disappear from the lives of all my mates to focus on my revision, or am I going to enjoy everyone's 18th birthday parties because it's a magical time of our lives?
Yeah.
And in the end, I tried to do both. I studied bloody hard and I
Mhm.
partied bloody hard as well. That's why
Mhm.
there's a night and day. But you really you got to do your absolute best to try everything, and then if you have to make the decision, um, then your why comes into it.
Mhm.
If your why is for other people to contribute to other people, and then your family are irreplaceable to you.
Mm.
But if you're well, you will know if your dream really means that much to you. But I
Ooh.
actually can't give you a good answer because it's not a position I've been in yet, to be honest.
But
But maybe I'll get
that
back
is
to you if
sound
I do.
advice, I would say, because you will find out very soon if you pursue something enough, and if that really means and matters more to you. You know, that is a good thought. That is a good thought to hold on to. So we'll end with this question here. Why you should love things that you do, even if it is not really a dream job?
Love things that you do. Not really. If it's not really a dream job.
I'm not sure how to, like. I mean, not quite sure if that's. Hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know how to
perhaps.
answer that one actually.
Yeah, maybe it's about enjoying things, even if it's not your main calling in life or something along those lines. For that, I would just say it's. I see myself as a tourist of the universe.
Hmm.
I like to learn and experience all different things, and it's you only get one life. It's a gift of a life, and every chapter in our story, whatever we do, it's an experience gifted to us, I believe. So
Hmm.
you should seek out the enjoyment in it. And when it comes to jobs as well, your job don't define you as a person. Yeah, it's what you do. But
Hmm.
human beings are complex. It's like the people you all see online, that's not the full story of them. The people in the office, they're living their own lives outside the office as well. It's just a small fraction.
Hmm.
And what our lives are, our time is different fractions of our lives. So you should go about living fully in whatever fractions you have. It might be work, might be study.
Mm.
No, you're not limited to one mode of existence in that regard.
Yeah. Well, we are going to go ahead and wrap up. But Ellis, I wanted to say that this was a true honor and pleasure to have you on the podcast. I really thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for talking with us on just kind of like, you know, your book, being an author, and you know, talking about your passion of running and how that does for your mental health and how to help with motivation. I really especially loved, you know, how you kind of opened up a little bit about you know, your father and things like that, and your mom being an inspiration to you. I really truly appreciate your time, and thank you so much for being here. It's been great.
It has been an honour and a privilege, Paximus. Honestly, I had such a great time tonight. Thank you so much for everyone who's been watching along as well in the chat, asking questions. I well appreciate that. It's the first time I've done something like this, and people have been asking questions. So it's been absolutely awesome. Yeah, so thank you so much, Paximus. I well appreciate it, man.
Yeah, definitely. And moving forward in the future, I would love to have you back for perhaps maybe another podcast to talk about some other things. And there's plenty to talk about, quite honestly, because you talk about motivation, you talk about mental health and productivity. So things like that, I would love to just kind of bring you back if you're able to. Of course.
100%.
So for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for tuning in, for checking out this podcast. This podcast will be available very soon on different platforms, on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon, things like that. And speaking of Amazon, I would love for you guys to go ahead and check out the description below to buy this book. It's called Running for Success by Ellis Warren. He talks about how to overcome low motivation to boost your mental health and increase your productivity. Guys, you will not regret it. It is a great book. I am so happy that I was able to have this conversation with all of you here on Meanwhile Back at the Lab with Paximus. Tomorrow, we're actually going to have another conversation with another study streamer. But remember, in the meantime, remember to be kind and to rewind. Have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Hadouken!